Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country, powered by Backcourt Marketing. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale, after a mostly victorious weekend for the men and women. Plus, we have baseball and softball to talk about, in addition to basketball. You know, Shane, there's a lot going on, and most of it is good news. And we're going to have our friend Bruce Pascoe from the Arizona Daily Star that's going to join us. But after we're recording this on Sunday night, a little earlier than usual this week. And there's a pretty big game at McHale Center on Saturday. And so we're going to recap that. And we might as well get to it in our first segment called Buy or Sell. And that is brought to you by our new friends at Ice Shaker. That is former Arizona Wildcat football player Chris Gronkowski's company. And the cool thing is, Shane, he is selling the Wildcat Country Ice Shakers on their website at iceshaker.com. Shane, how do they get, how do our fans and listeners get one of these cool ice shakers with our logo on it?
Well, we're going to place a link on our social media channels on Twitter and Facebook. Let people know where to get the ice shaker that you see here if you're watching on the video. And if you're not, shame on you. That's okay. We appreciate you listening in audio form as well. So you can get it there. And then also for your first order, there's a promo code Wildcat Country, all one word, Wildcat Country, $5 off your first order at Ice Shaker. That includes anything, not just the Wildcat Country Ice Shaker, even though they are fantastic. But happy to announce that partnership and thrilled to be working with Chris Gronkowski and his team. And by the way, we talked to Gronk a couple of weeks ago, so check that interview out. Yeah,
he was great to have on, and we'll have him on again soon. And these are legit cool. So, and I'm not just kidding. Like, these are seriously cool. I had people come over and take a look at my house. They're like, "Where did you get that?" It's like, "Hey, you can buy one too. iceshaker.com."
Yep. Yeah. And we posted it, after we got these, and I got mine in the mail a week ago, and then literally several messages on Twitter. Where do I get one of these? So it's not just hype. And like I said, this is the second week in a row, Eric. I put some ice water in this a couple hours before we started recording. Still cold. So it really does do its job.
And there you have it. Now it's time for buy or sell. All right, Shane, number one. And now I just want to say, I to toot my own horn, I told you that Oregon game is going to be close, like uncomfortably close last week. Even though Oregon wasn't ranked, they got blown out by ASU on Thursday. We know that. Saturday's win against the Ducks by Arizona can be considered a statement win for Arizona. Buy or sell?
Oh, as soon as we start the show, I'm going to go into wet blanket mode. I'm going to sell it, Eric. Look,
really?
Yeah. Look, we all knew Arizona was going to get Oregon's best shot. We talked about that. Mm-hmm. We knew it was going to be closer than Oregon's blowout losses to Cal and ASU. But I just can't reconcile, barely beating a team that lost up the road in Tempe to a bad ASU team by 30 points a couple nights ago. I can't call that a statement win. It was an important win, a big one on a national stage with College game day in town, and certainly crucial in terms of possibly securing a number one seed in the tournament. And as of now, it looks like Arizona is probably the number 2 overall seed, with the Auburn losing later in the day after those the top 16 was announced. But even with the Ducks' best effort, in my opinion, it shouldn't have come down to the final seconds. If Arizona had taken better care of the ball, made its free throws. And by the way, there's no excuse for not fouling on that last possession. Okay. I'm thankful that Arizona has a freak 7-footer in Christian Coloco who can defend the 3-point lane like he did on that last possession.
Yep.
But I'm celebrating the win. I'm breathing, but more than anything, Eric, I'm breathing a sigh of relief. I just don't know how you can call it a statement win after Oregon has laid the eggs they have over the last couple of weeks.
All right. So Dana Altman is the best coach in the Pac-12. And don't forget that Oregon swept the Southern Cal road trip over 2 previous top 5, top 10 teams in UCLA and USC at the time. They would have been the first school in the history of the NCAA basketball to win 3 road games in the same year over top 5 teams.
Yeah, they came close to doing it. Yeah. And if they had come off those wins, then I would be like, oh, it's a statement win. But I know how it works, Eric. I know it's the U of A effect, as Kyle Dada up in Tempe calls it, where teams will sleepwalk in Tempe and then they'll give Arizona its best shot. I get it, but man, and you felt it coming. I made the quip on Twitter. It's like ASU blew out Oregon, so naturally Oregon's going to be up by double digits by the second media timeout, and that was pretty much the case. They're up 12 in the first half, and you think maybe Arizona's going to run away with it the second half. Look, again, the Ducks played great, and I don't think Arizona played especially bad, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
The shot making was great in that game.
They made some ridiculous shots. Yeah. It reminded me a little bit of a few years back when Oregon couldn't miss in Eugene.
Yep.
Arizona, it didn't matter what Arizona did. But I just struggle to call it a statement win because of what the Ducks have done recently. That's all.
All right, number two. This is kind of a cop-out question, but I'll go with it. All right, we saw how bad the free throw shooting was last night. If you were Coach Lloyd, you'd have your players in the gym practicing free throws excessively, and I mean excessively this week.
Why is it a cop-out question?
It's just because it seems like an easy buy, right? So it's kind of like an easy, it's kind of like a free spread.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I'll buy it if he thinks it would help. But, look, Arizona's still tied for fifth in free throw percentage in the Pac-12. They're almost 72% for the season. They're currently ranked number 171 out of all 358 Division I teams in that category. So they're an average free throw shooting team. I don't know if that's something that really has the ability to change between now and the NCAA tournament. I think the best thing Tommy Lloyd can do in late situations where we know the other team is going to foul is get Tubelis off the court, because he's the worst free throw shooter in that 8-man rotation. And Ballo's not great either, but for big men, him and Koloko combined are over 70%. Yeah. They don't have like an Achilles heel in terms of an awful free throw shooter, but they don't have an elite free throw shooter either. So yeah, certainly something to work on, but I just don't know. Does Tommy Lloyd think that having them in the gym practicing free throws above other things is a priority at this point of the season? I don't know.
Number three, and I know this one's probably a sensitive topic for you. Buy or sell. Kirk Kriisa is an offensive liability towards the end of games, especially.
Why is it a sensitive topic for me?
Because I know you're a big Kirk Kriisa fan.
Oh, I love and hate that guy simultaneously, yes, like every Wildcat fan does.
He made the best play of the night last night and then the worst.
On consecutive possessions. So,
correct.
So you know the story, Eric, about the fox and the scorpion?
Yep.
The scorpion wants to ride. For those who don't know, most people have heard it, but the scorpion wants to ride on the fox's back to get across the pond. The fox says, no, because you'll sting me. Scorpion insists, no, I'm not going to sting you. Well, because we both die. So the fox agrees to let the scorpion ride on his back. And of course, the scorpion stings them while they're in the pond. And the fox says, why'd you do that? Now we're both going to die. And the scorpion says, I can't help it. It's my nature. Kirk Kriisa is who he is. And I think that's
outstanding.
I think that's a net positive for Arizona. So in fact, I would suggest that this team is more a reflection of Kirk Kriisa's personality than of Tommy Lloyd's. I think Tommy Lloyd is all he's done is allow Kirk Kriisa to be himself. And look, Kirk does some dumb things, and there's a decent chance that he's going to do something stupid in the tournament, and it might cost Arizona a win. I certainly hope it doesn't, but we could all see that scenario play out, right?
Right.
But you have no choice but to take the good with the bad with him. Yep. And I think Arizona's swagger is one of the reasons they are 24-2. Kirk Kriisa is the swagger on this team. He's the guy who runs the show. He's the point guard. They feed off that. You see that arrogance throughout the team. You heard it in Tempe. You saw it when Tubelis stands in front of an Oregon player and his teammate when one's trying to help the other up. They're kind of jerks, but it works for them. Yep. We'd hate these guys if they were anyone else. Yep. But I circle back to your question about Kirk Kriisa's liability offensively. Maybe, but I'm going to sell that he's a liability overall. He's absolutely a net positive for this team. His teammates love him. And like I said, he's as big a reason as any, I think, that this team is 24-2.
I'm going to put this one in neutral. There's part of me that wants to see Justin Kier.
Speaking of cop-outs.
Yeah, I know. This is I totally copped out of this one. Part of me wants to see Justin Kier in the game at the end because he's more of a true point guard, ball handler, I'd say smarter player. But Kirk Kriisa is a playmaker. And Kirk Kriisa made the play of the night, a play that we won't forget. Whatever happens this year, we're going to remember what Kirk Kriisa did with a minute and change to go against Oregon.
It's not the only big shot he's made late in games either.
No, we're going to forget about. Yeah, we're going to forget about the turnover. I mean, we will, but we won't forget about that shot that he made. So yes, I'm copping out with my answer. I'm in neutral on that one for that. Okay, number 4, buy or sell. Ben Mathurin is the conference player of the year. Christian Koloko is the conference defensive player of the year, and Tommy Lloyd is the coach of the year. Are you buying or selling the awards being swept by Arizona? So
let me ask you this. If I buy 2 of the 3, would I be selling? Is it all or nothing?
It's all or nothing.
All or nothing. Okay. Then I guess I'm selling because I'm going to buy the last. I'm going to buy the last 2.
You're not buying Ben Mathurin.
Well, here. I think Tommy Lloyd is a national coach of the year.
Okay, I'll give you that. Fine.
Let's start with that. Okay. And Christian Koloko, I mean, he solidified. Yes, defensive player of the year, especially, and he comes up even bigger in late moments. You know, like some of the best players on offense in NBA and college basketball history make big shots late. He makes great defensive plays, especially late in the game, and that's huge. And we'll talk to Bruce Pascoe about whether Arizona's been better on offense or defense in a little bit. If you believe the Player of the Year award should go to the best player on the best team, then yes, it's Ben Mathurin.
Yes.
If you take the records away, and look at who's been the most impactful player on his team, I'm going to make your head explode. I think it's Terrell Brown. He leads the conference in points per game. He leads the conference in steals per game. He's fourth in assists per game. Look, Washington isn't very good. They're a 500 team overall, 500 in the conference. They'd be sitting in last place right now if not for Terrell Brown. So I'm buying the latter too, but I think Terrell Brown is a Pac-12 player of the year as of now.
I am selling your statement and buying mine. I think Ben Mathurin is the conference player of the year. I'm sorry, but you can't give the conference player of the year to a 500 team. You just can't.
It's not his fault. The rest of his team sucks.
Well, but you can also argue along those same lines that he's able to put up the stats he's able to do because he's on a crappy team.
Sure, but he's so far above in points per game than anyone. No one else averages more than 20, and he's well above 20.
Oh, because there's nobody else on his team, as we've seen.
In steals, he's so far above and beyond anyone. He does it on both sides of the ball. Look, if Ben Mathurin wins it, I'll be very happy about it. And I'm sure there's other guys, there's Johnny Juzang and others to talk about too. So it's not just those two. But I would lean toward Terrell Brown. I don't know if he's going to win it. I'm
surprised. Okay. All right. Fair. Number 5.
I'm glad I have the ability to surprise you every so often.
Yeah, that would surprise me. I thought for sure
all this time we've been together.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was a shoe-in question. I thought that was another.
You were wrong.
Okay. Now this one I don't know is a shoe-in question because I don't know what you're going to say about this. All right. Number 5. You will feel more confident going into the NCAA tournament with Tommy Lloyd coaching Arizona as compared to Sean Miller.
I'll sell for 2 reasons. Number one, we've you'll get your turn. Number one, we've never seen Tommy Lloyd be the head coach of an NCAA tournament team.
Fair.
Okay.
Yep.
That's a fact. Second, I think the tournament is more about players than coaches. Okay. We've seen some of the best coaches in college basketball, including Lute Olson, suffer massive upsets in the first round of this tournament. We saw Arizona lose as a 3 seed in the first round one year and as a 2 seed the next year. I think they're the only team still in NCAA tournament history to do that. 4 years later, they win the whole thing as a 4 seed. Doesn't make Lute Olson a bad coach for losing those games. Tom Izzo, Mike Krzyzewski, they've all lost in the first round. I think it often comes down to the chemistry and the attitude of the players. And I think coaches can only control that so much. I think this is a team, this Arizona team, we'll talk to Bruce about this as well, that's equally capable of winning the national championship and losing to an 8 or a 9 seed in the second round. I will give Tommy Lloyd credit if they win it all. I will, hold them a little bit accountable if they lose, but I think that either result is going to be more about the players on this particular team than about Tommy Lloyd.
Great answers. No question about this. I am buying this because of my personal, nothing against Sean Miller as a person, don't know him that well. As far as an actual coach, I started to look at Sean Miller as a choker. The UConn game, okay, they overachieved in 11. They beat Duke and got to the Elite Eight, and you lose to a UConn team that won the national title, but Arizona was better that year, in my opinion. Okay, then you lose to Wisconsin 2 years in a row, and you're like, what are we doing here? And then
let's break those games down real quick, Eric. The charge, the block or charge that could have been called either way. I mean, that was a coin flip against Wisconsin the 1 year. And the second year, Sam Decker loses his mind. What do you suppose? Sean Miller can't go out and guard Sam Decker. I'm just saying.
So then they had the loss to Wichita State in there, which wasn't great. And then came the one where it permanently, in my opinion, tarnished Sean Miller, and that was the Buffalo game. Got completely outcoached by Nate Oates. Did not have your team ready to play at all. And that, for me, after that game, even though Arizona won the regular season and Pac-12 tournament championships, I was done with Sean Miller. Regardless of everything else, I was done.
I think, Eric, that goes more to my point, though, than it does to yours, because I think that team, and we talked about this years ago, even off the record, we were just, maybe we were out and about, whatever.
Yeah.
That team was a little cliquey. And they weren't the mess together team. And I don't know if that was Sean Miller's fault. I think it was a combination just of those personalities. Maybe they all didn't mesh. Plus the fact you had all those off-court distractions. And I remember Bruce Pascoe talking about, and other people talking about, there seemed to be a sense of relief when that season was over because of everything they had to deal with, all the off-court crap, the Mark Schlabach BS report, everything.
Yeah.
So I think if you break it down game by game, year by year, I don't know if that's a fair assessment of Sean Miller. Did he get to the Final Four in Arizona? No. Bottom line, he didn't get there.
Nope.
But I think if you look at it game by game, you may see things a little differently. And again, I just think, my personal opinion, I think it comes down more to the players than the coaches.
Okay. That's all fair points. Can't argue with that. I'm sure we'll have some Twitter debates about that this week. Okay. The bonus question that you don't know what I'm going to ask every week. I like to throw in one of these.
I know you do.
I am mildly concerned that Arizona has not lost a quote unquote bad game yet. The reason I say this is because you look at Auburn losing at Florida. It's not like an awful loss, but it's not a great loss either because Auburn's a lot better and Florida's not that great. Mm-hmm. Arizona has lost 2 games on the road at Tennessee, who's ranked, on the road at UCLA, who's ranked. And probably if they lose another one, it's probably going to be at USC next Tuesday night. Okay, I would think. I mean, they could lose to Colorado or Utah, but probably not. Mm-hmm. It kind of concerns me going into the tournament when you haven't had a kind of that wake-up call. Do you buy or sell that?
I'll sell in the sense that I don't think it's concerned. I don't think they have to lose to a bad team. I personally wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind Arizona losing a game before the tournament, as long as it doesn't cost them a 1 seed.
Okay.
If they lose to Colorado or USC or in the Pac-12 tournament, I'm fine with that. Not necessarily because this team is going to need humility, because I don't think that's possible. This team is who they are. But I think that they just need a reminder they're not invincible and they can't dig themselves out of every hole they put themselves into. So I wouldn't mind seeing them lose. I don't know if that matters or not, but I think I could live with them losing at Colorado or at USC. I think my concern is they lose to both of those games. I hope they don't. And I don't think they will, but I think it's a possibility. But as far as do they have to lose to a bad team? I don't buy that.
It's a weird take. It was admittedly, it's a weird question, but I just wanted to throw one out there. Think about it. And those of
I understand your perspective. I understand.
Think about it. I mean, you look at these other teams. Most other teams in the country have lost a game where you're like, probably that's inexcusable.
Yeah.
When you don't lose one of those, don't you think that's going to happen at some point? Like
maybe
Gonzaga went undefeated last year and we were all like, oh my God, this is the team. And then they almost lost to UCLA in the Final Four, and then Baylor just whooped them.
Yeah.
And you're like, you kind of want Arizona to have that wake-up call. And Saturday night was almost it. I mean, the Oregon game was actually very close to being that one.
Yeah. Well, Gonzaga was undefeated, though. So they have tasted defeat a couple times. They got embarrassed at UCLA. They had an embarrassing game.
Right, I was saying last year in the final.
I understand what you're saying. No, I understand what you're saying about Gonzaga. I'm just
saying, talking about you.
I'm just talking about Arizona has been embarrassed.
Yeah.
They got embarrassed at UCLA. So they have had that humility. Again, I wouldn't mind seeing them take one more lick. Again, as long as it doesn't cost them a 1 seed. And I would rather them be a 1 seed in the Midwest than a 2 seed out West where they have to play Gonzaga.
And don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not advocating that I want Arizona to lose again, because I would rather they not. I'm just saying, would it be the worst thing? Would fans be freaking out? Sure. But would it be the worst thing? Probably not.
No.
We're going to talk to Bruce Pascoe from the Arizona Daily Star. Always glad to have him on. 3rd appearance on Wildcat Country. And then we will come back in the last segment, make some predictions and talk about the other Arizona sports, plus some weird news from up the road in Tempe. This is Wildcat Country, powered by Backcourt Marketing. Shane, always glad to have our friend Bruce Pascoe, the ace beat reporter for the Arizona Daily Wildcats for the Arizona Daily Star, joining us here on Wildcat Country in this segment, once again powered by our friends at Backcourt Marketing. Bruce, you saw a heck of a game, obviously, in person last night, and one at McKale Center the other week against UCLA. And my first question is, considering the UCLA and Oregon atmospheres were just so crazy at McKale, when is the last time that you remember that McKale was so rocking like those 2 games?
Wow. That's a good question, because I can just remember that it hasn't been that way in a long time. I think that's kind of what jumps out at me. There's been so many great games and moments and, crazy environments, but I think consistently it's been UCLA and Oregon. I guess off the top of my head, maybe because you think of losses being so much more dramatic, they stick in your mind. I know they do for coaches, when you're covering a team that wins more than they lose, as they do. And I would think that one where they lost to Oregon, that would have been, I think, 15-16. I think Raleigh Hawkins was visiting as a recruit that day, and that was pretty nuts. And they lost that game and snapped that long home court winning streak they had. But yeah, it's been years. However you look at it, it's been quite some time. There were some big moments in that 17-18 season, but there was always that, just that weirdness going on with Alonzo Trier and Ayton. And then, the the team with the freshmen in 2019-20 had a couple of pretty wild days at McHale, but nothing quite like this that we saw in these last couple of games, particularly yesterday at Oregon. That was like it was like old times, really.
Yeah, Bruce, and like Eric said, thanks for joining us. Check out the Wildcaster podcast, another great Wildcat podcast as well. We're at it. Bruce is part of that one. So Oregon loses by almost 30 points to ASU. And before that, they lose by double digits at home to Cal. In between, they beat Washington State. Then they go and they play number 3 Arizona down to the last few seconds. Is the final score and how competitive that game was more a reflection of Oregon just playing out of its mind, or Arizona maybe playing down to the level of its competition?
Well, I think I think you had something on Twitter, Shane, responding to somebody who were saying that they were going to laying an egg at ASU means they're going to be tough on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And they were.
Yep.
And I thought that too. I mean, you guys have been around. I mean, how many times have you seen a team not play that, especially a good team that's underachieving?
Yep.
Kind of do bad at ASU on a Thursday and then come in and give Arizona, the game of their lives, or maybe even beat them. I mean, it's happened many, many times. And I think what happened here was, first of all, ASU, they're just weird. I mean, they're wildly inconsistent, and they play really hard, so you never really know what they're going to do. And they did well. And I think Oregon has underachieved. They're talented. I think it just seems like they haven't really cohesively meshed together. They bring in a lot of new guys every year, with different agendas and experience levels, and play a pretty complex defense. And usually by now they've gotten it together. Dana Altman gets them together. They haven't really. So I think there's a little bit where they got a lot of talent, and it just, game like that brought it out with them. And then in the end, they couldn't get it done, but they've got talent. I mean, that team was picked second for a reason. There's they lost some players, but they brought in really good players, and they had Quincy Guerrero was a good player at Syracuse, and Jacob Young was a steals leader in the Big Ten at Rutgers last year, I think, and plus Will Richardson coming back, and just Eric Williams, kind of a hybrid guy. There's some tough players in that team.
Eric and I have talked several times about how confident and maybe arrogant this particular team is. And we saw it again against Oregon. Kirk Kriisa, I don't know if you saw it from your vantage point, him hitting the 3 and then blowing a kiss to someone on Oregon. Yeah. He seems to lead the way in that arrogance category. Have you come across an Arizona team with this much swagger, let's call it?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, well, I mean, before I was here, I mean, I've heard stories about, like, the Stoudemire Reeves team maybe had a little bit of that, from what it sounded like. I think, certainly the championship team, Miles Simon, was somewhat reminiscent of Kirk Reese, I think, from what I can see anyway, just as far as personality, maybe even a little bit in their games, but
AJ Bramlett did say that the Miles Simon, that version.
That's interesting. He said that, because I was just thinking that was just me, but he would know. Yeah. So there's that, and I mean, since then, I don't know. I mean, I think that really talented 2003 team with Gardner and Walton, they were just really, really good. I don't think they carry themselves necessarily quite like this team does, but again, a lot of that's Kriisa. I mean, I think the rest of the team, it's pretty team oriented. I think they play off of Kriisa like that, but I don't think guys on the team are quite like he is. It's really a unusual dynamic that he's sort of driving there.
One thing that Shane and I talked about last week, especially Bruce, and it happened again this weekend twice, is Arizona got off to slow starts. And this has been a trend. I think we're going back 5 or 6 games, and it may be more than that, where Arizona starts out where they're getting crushed early on. And some of those times, I mean, ASU is 14-1. Yesterday, I think it was like 32-20. Is this something that concerns you going into March? Or do you think this team's just good enough to overcome whatever's thrown at them early on?
Oh, sure. No, it definitely does. But I think, that they answered that last night. I mean, that was the kind of game last night. I thought, if they are going to be, messing around with the Washington States or Oregon States or whatever, and then this is the kind of game where it's going to come back to bite them. And they didn't. To their credit, they came out hard. I mean, both teams played unbelievable the first 4-8 minutes. I mean, nobody even missed a shot, even though they were playing pretty hard defensively too. It was crazy. So they did not come out slow, I don't think, last night. And so, they just need to, make sure they don't get in that maybe that second round game where they're kind of lulled by maybe having an easy game the first time and don't really know anything about that opponent. I think, that could happen. And that is why you do see number one seeds lose to that 8-9 team sometimes on a Saturday or Sunday in the tournament. I mean, it does happen. So they have to be aware of that. But I mean, I tell you, so far this season, Tommy Lloyd and that staff's they've done a pretty good job getting these guys, to stay on a even level, pretty even keel. And, those dips in kind of human nature, whatever you call them, are pretty rare and usually surmountable. And so that bodes well. I mean, every team to some extent is going to have a slow start or a downtime against a team they're not ready for. They're tired or they're overlooking them or whatever.
But it's been a trend though lately. I mean, really, I mean, ASU is ridiculous. That one was bad.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think some of that, I think, that's certainly something I would be concerned about. I think Tommy Lloyd's mentioned that he's concerned, but I think, at this point of the Pac-12, all these teams start to know each other really well. And there's the defenses on these guys are a lot tougher. It's just harder to blow teams away especially when you get deep in the conference play. I mean, you just, even Oregon State gave them problems for a while there, and they're in last place. And that wasn't all in Arizona. They certainly could have played better. And, I think Tommy Lloyd kind of tried to take the blame off his players by saying, well, I tried to mess with the game plan too much. Yeah, maybe he did. I think maybe, but I think the players probably could have played a little harder. And that's a concern, but I don't, it's hard to imagine a college team that doesn't have some of those letdowns. It's just, again, it's kind of human nature.
All right, let's talk once again from a historical context, at least in your opinion. So last night was a phenomenal game that we saw at McHale Center. Obviously, we talked about the atmosphere, but in games that you've covered, specifically in the regular season, where does that one stand out for you as one of the most exciting or best? And how does it compare to some of the others that you've in your time covering them for the Daily Star?
Well, it's just really hard to answer those because there's just been so many great games and I mean, I guess, you think of that. I always think of the whiteout where Derek Williams blocked the shot and the game when I think one of the senior days I think it was later that season where Momo Jones left them up in the stands and they did all that. In fact, we're talking about swagger earlier. I failed to mention that 10-11 team. That team had some swagger, and that was Momo Jones. I mean, Derek Williams was really, really good, but Momo Jones was kind of the Kirk Reese of that team. But there were some really big ones. I think that certainly that 13-14 season that before Brandon Ashley got hurt, there was a couple of amazing ones. I mean, honestly, it's hard to pick out one or two though.
I throw at that Florida game where they came back down 6 in the last minute. I was in the stands for that one. That was crazy atmosphere the whole way.
Yeah. And I remember that, right? And that was I think that was the doubleheader with the football team in a bowl game the same day. It was just
both made big comebacks. Yeah.
Crazy day for Arizona sports.
Well, let me ask you about Arizona's final 3 road games of the season, starting with this Mountain West trip against Utah and Colorado, which is no Pac-12 road trip is easy, but this one, Utah's been playing a little bit better. Colorado's won 5 in a row. Any concerns about a slip up on that trip from your perspective for Arizona?
Yeah, I mean, I thought, they got past the first test. I thought going into last week, I thought there was 3 tests. I thought, this Oregon game, I think Colorado, the second game of a high altitude trip against a team that's pretty good, young, but pretty good. And then the third one, of course, being yet USC and coming at the tail end of what's not going to be kind of a broken up trip. It'll be a difficult week because they're going to fly back from Boulder late that night after they play Colorado, stay here in Tucson for 2 days and then go to LA on Monday night and get to try and get some sleep and play USC, late the next night. That's not going to be easy. And USC, besides the logistics of all that, USC is just, I think, is the kind of team that can cause Arizona trouble. Did a little bit here at McHale, super long in athletic, and just, when they've had it together, they've been really, they've really played like a top 15 type of team, which is kind of where they were expected to be on the border of earlier this year. It's just they've been a little hard to figure because their schedule is so soft. So So those are the scares. I think, you never know. Even Utah's not, they're not quite there yet this season, but I think the two games in the mountains always kind of scare you, I think, because they're usually pretty good teams, and just, again, playing at altitude. And at Utah, if they're good, and they're not this year, but when they're good, they actually have the second best fans probably in the league. And that can be a crazy environment. It won't be this year, probably, but they still have students at Utah that are literally sitting right on top of the bench. So they can really, have some influence there and get into the guys a little bit. And then at Colorado, you have the benches right opposite where the visiting team sets. The students are right opposite that, and so they can have a lot of fun that way too. So they're tough environments, and we've seen over the years, Sean Miller's teams anyway. It was tough for them in Boulder. So you just never know, and that team's been a little up and down, but again, they're pretty talented. They're just pretty young.
I got two more questions for you, and I'll ask you first about USC. And the Trojans might have come even closer to beating Arizona than Oregon did. They were up 6 points with 4 or 5 minutes left. Are they, in your opinion, the second best team in the Pac-12 right now, or would you say that's UCLA?
Well, UCLA is just, they're just a little bit in a funk right now. I still think they're better overall, just because of the talent they have. They're so deep with talent. It's just, not only do they have, everybody talks about the two J&J type, those forwards, it can cause you all kinds of matchups, but they go deep. Peyton Watson's probably an NBA, really good NBA prospect, just, and they're, he's just playing off the bench, doing some defense for him and some other things. They've got shooters, they've got all kinds of, guys. So they just, haven't always been there. And they had to struggle. They lost to Oregon, when they didn't have fans in Pauley, and they had a long COVID pause. They came back, started to get together, and it's been a little odd for them. But that said, it's pretty close call, actually, Shane. I think, USC certainly head to head. USC's beaten them 5 times in a row now. They just beat them a while, and now they're going to go back and play again at Pauley. Maybe that'll be the decider, but it's just an interesting matchup because USC's got those super long guys. They can play 4 guys 6'8" or taller, and UCLA plays one big and a bunch of guys that are 6'5", 6'6". So it's crazy to say, and they're certainly pretty close no matter how you look at it.
All right, my last question for you. Right after the Arizona-Oregon game, Arizona was number 8 in Ken Palm in offense, adjusted offense, and number 8 in defense, number 8 in both categories. Which side of the ball have you been more impressed with in terms of Arizona basketball this season? They're very good in both. Which has been a little bit better in your opinion?
Yeah, I take your pick. I think they're equal. Honestly, I know it's a cop out or whatever, but it's equally impressive. But I think I would say, in one sense, I'd say defense deserves more of the credit, because I think this team gets talked about so much, especially earlier this year, maybe not as much lately, but just the offense is what caught you, because it was so different, and they were just blowing people away and scoring 80, 90, 100 points. But really, this team the defense is really impressive. And I think, central to that is obviously Christian Coloco, and not only the way he's protecting the rim, but now he's going out, they can, if he gets switched out and has to guard a guard, it doesn't seem to be a problem for him.
How many 7-footers can do that?
Yeah, it's just it's a unicorn type situation. And he's really improved. And then you've seen Umo Barlow improve, especially defensively. And even Tubelis has improved defensively. He got subbed out a couple times against Oregon for Pelle Larsson because of the matchups there. But he's getting better. And then, then those guys are allowing those perimeter guys to play, even a little more aggressively on the perimeter, because they know what they have inside, and it's a really sound unit. So I guess from that aspect, I'd probably say defensively, but they've both been impressive. I'm just thinking sometimes I feel like their defense probably deserves a little more love than it's getting.
And my last question for you, and it's a 2-part question as well. First of all, Arizona has 5 regular season games left, and then the Pac-12 tournament. How many losses can they afford and still stay on the 1 line? And second of all, my question would be, where outside of a number 1 seed in the West, what is your preferred situation for Arizona going into the tournament?
Well, that's a great question. Of course, it's always relative to what other teams are doing, but I would think as long as they're quality losses, they might even be able to get away with two. Like say if it's at SC and in the final of the Pac-12 championship, they might still be good a number one. Otherwise, it might be, if they lost at Colorado and then dropped to a Friday game in the Pac-12, then they might go down to a two or possibly even lower, but probably not. So and the interesting thing there is that if you want to be in the West, you might want them to drop down a little bit. And the only real difference between a 1 and a 2, of course, is you get, you pretty much get a freebie in that first game as a 1, and then a 2, sometimes you might get somebody who's a little bit better that can make you work a little bit. So there's not a whole lot of difference there. That's the weird thing. Because if assuming Gonzaga, keeps winning, if they drop to 2, they're going to the West. If they stay 1, they're probably going to have to go to San Antonio. I mean, because and they do things by mileage a lot. And right now, of course, they're probably, they're probably number 2 overall with Auburn losing yesterday. So they would get their choice to go anywhere but San Francisco, and that would be San Antonio. But even if Auburn were meant to bounce back ahead of them, or Kentucky, both of those teams are closer to Chicago. So they probably still put Arizona and San Antonio. And as far as what they would want to do, yeah, I would think, in fact, if I were Arizona, I would want to go to San Antonio no matter what, because I think that it's just I'm really interested in the history of things, and Arizona's tournament history in California is not always that good. They, especially in the regional rounds, everybody knows about Anaheim, but they've also lost in LA in the Elite Eight. They lost in the Sweet 16 in San Jose to Xavier. It's just, I don't know. There's something about it. So. And it's equal distance, and San Antonio. I mean, if you want to get into history again, they won a final there in 2001. I went to the Final Four that year, so it's not a bad place to be. It's and fans can drive there just as easily as they can drive to San Francisco or fly.
And there you have it from the dean himself, Bruce Pascoe, as I like to call him, the ace beat writer for the Arizona Daily Star. Glad to have you on for the third time, and I'm sure we will have you on again soon. Great wisdom as always.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it.
I want to thank our friend Bruce Pascoe for joining us once again. Always a great interview, and you learn a lot from him. So very good to get his opinion. And I wasn't thinking, Shane, just the last question about where I'd like to see Arizona. I was thinking Midwest, Chicago. We talked about that last week. I didn't even think about San Antonio. And you start to see these projections. Arizona and San Antonio makes me kind of feel pretty good about things,
Yeah, I'd be fine with it. I mean, it's not like a 6-hour drive to SoCal if they play in the West. So about the same distance. And Ted Robinson we had on a few weeks ago said that traveling really does seem to matter in this tournament. But you're going to San Diego for the first 2 rounds and San Antonio, same difference. I wouldn't sweat that at all.
All right. So for those of you keeping score at home, the San Diego games will be on the first Friday, Sunday of the NCAA tournament. And then San Antonio would be on Thursday, Saturday. So there'd be a little bit quicker turnaround.
A little bit less of a break then.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not a huge deal. It's like an extra day or two, which at this point, I don't think is a huge deal, but just want to throw that out there. Okay, let's do kind of a quick hitters thing. The women's basketball team had an eventful weekend up in the Pacific Northwest, beating Washington State on Friday and suffering a tough one, beating Washington on Friday, suffering a tough one against Washington State on Sunday. But the worst part about Sunday's game is Kate Reese, who is obviously one of the biggest stars on the team, went down in agony with a pretty gruesome looking shoulder injury.
Awful looking injury.
What can you tell us about that, Shane?
Well, nothing more than what we all know, but that was hard. I mean, not only watching it, but seeing her reaction afterwards was mortifying. We've had Kate on the show a couple of times, and she's been great. And we wish her a speedy recovery, regardless of whether she's back this season or not. Hope everything turns out okay. It sounds like she might be back before the NCAA tournament, maybe even the Pac-12 tournament, because it was a clean separation. So
dislocation.
Excuse me, dislocated. Yeah. That's amazing. But again, more than that, I'm glad that it wasn't worse. I'm sorry she had to go through that. We saw how devastated Dia Barnes was and the Washington State players were. No one wanted that to happen. So I'm glad it's not worse than it was. Kate posted a tweet that said, she's doing okay and hopes to be back soon and hopes people will turnout for Arizona's last two games of the regular season at home against UCLA and USC, which are going to be massive in terms of seeding.
Yep.
I think Arizona is probably a solid 3 right now on the women's side, like they were last season. In the course, on the women's side, now that we're sort of back to normal with scheduling, you get a top 4 seed. You get to host the first 2 games of the NCAA tournament, so that would be huge. So Arizona wins. I think if they take care of business and beat UCLA and USC at home, which is going to be tougher without Kate Reese, but if they're able to do that, then that would probably secure a top 4 seed for Arizona, and hopefully Kate would be able to come back for that.
Yeah, and I think that's what's important is we just want to see Arizona get that, be at home in the first 2 rounds. UCLA 6-8 in the conference, USC 4-11, both, especially UCLA really falling hard this year. So big weekend for the women coming up here. All right, let's talk baseball. Really went out to Arlington, Texas. I guess the one thing I want to say is Jay who? I know it's early. It's only been 3 games, but they beat Kansas State 8-6. They beat Oklahoma 14-4, and then they beat number 14 Texas Tech in Texas 13-2. It's a really good team, and Chip Hale can't get off to a much better start than that.
You talk about great offense and defense. Arizona baseball was great on in terms of pitching and hitting. Their starters, none of them went deep into any game, but they combined for allowed 3 runs and 13 innings in those 3 games and those 3 wins. Yep. Get used to the name Tanner Otremba, who made some big plays in the postseason for Arizona last year. Okay. He went, I do the math right at the top of my head. I don't have it in front of me. I think he was 7 of 14, a couple home runs, a triple, and a couple doubles in those 3 games for Arizona.
Yeah.
So and he wasn't the only one, but he stood out big time. So Arizona lost a lot of power, but it looks like they've replenished it and then some. The guys seem to love playing for Chip Hale. There was a clip of him talking to the team after the game. Chip Hale absolutely loves this job. And when we had him on a few weeks ago, and he talked about this is his last job, as long as Arizona has him, this is his last job. He's not looking to move up. He loves being in Tucson. He loves wearing the uniform, and it's great knowing that they'll have that stability. And obviously, long way to go this season, but they're off to a fantastic start, and I'm certainly feeling better every day about the Chip Hale hire.
Well, it's an interesting week for Arizona. They have by the time we do our next podcast next week, Arizona baseball will have played most likely 6 games. They are scheduled to play all at home. GCU on Tuesday, 4 games against Milwaukee, Thursday through Sunday, and then Dixie State comes in Tuesday. I'd say anything short of 5-1 would be a disappointment, but this Arizona team looks like the real deal. And Jay Johnson, good luck at LSU, but Chip Hale thus far off to a fine start. Can't ask for much better. And
GCU lost like 20-1 to Nevada the other day. So.
Oh wow, I didn't see that. No, yep. Okay. Well, didn't they lose their coach? Didn't Stankiewicz go to ASU?
I don't know. Embarrassingly, I can't tell you that. I just know that they got their butt kicked the other day.
I mean, no. Willie Bloomquist ASU. I'm sorry.
Bloomquist is. Yeah,
Bloomquist.
I knew that.
I was like,
you threw me off.
I knew it was a middle infielder.
Like, did Stankiewicz leave?
Yeah, my bad on that. Okay, yeah. That should be an interesting game Tuesday night. Good luck to the baseball team. The softball team at home this weekend went. I think it was 4-1. They lost 2 numbers.
They lost a couple. Well, this past weekend they just lost the 1.
They lost the 1, right? They're 7-2 overall. Yeah.
Right.
They lost to Kentucky. So the 2 ranked SEC teams that they played, they've lost to, which is a little bit concerning.
Well, the Kentucky game was close, but I think my concern is the pitching because in softball, in college softball, if you have a top 10 national pitcher, you can go really far. And I don't know if Arizona has one this season or not. They have a lot of great hitting. Now, Carly Scoopin in particular is had a great freshman year, and she's picked up where she's left off. That's not going to be a problem, but pitching is a question. And I think Caitlin Lowe is going to do great at Arizona. Early on, they look like a College World Series team. No, but that could certainly change between now and the end of the season.
So they play a tournament out in Cathedral, California, and they play 5 games this weekend, the Mary Nutter Collegiate Classic. And the last of those games on Saturday, Shane, is against, unfortunately, the number 1 team in the country in Oklahoma.
Oh, boy.
So Caitlin Lowe is not, you talk about not getting a really easy start.
Thrown right into the fire. Yeah, that's a Lute Olson-esque non-conference schedule right there.
To play 1 and 2 in your first 3 weekends is pretty something. So good luck to the girls there. They have a very good team. But we'd like to, as Shane said, like to see more about pitching there. All right. before we make our predictions for the weekend, this one was interesting to me. So ASU's quarterback, Jaden Daniels, who has been disappointing the last year and a half, 2 years, whatever you want to call the 2020 season. He made this whole video on Twitter about coming back to ASU and everything was great. And then last week he decides, I'm out. I'm gone. We don't know where he's going next. Are you surprised by this? And what does this mean, in your opinion, for ASU's football program going forward?
I wonder what took him so long. I know but what was interesting though, is that apparently from what I've read, he was very loyal to Herm Edwards. And so you figure, okay, if he's stuck with him through this point, then he's going to stay. But you see the little video of his former teammates raiding his locker.
Yeah. That wasn't good.
Boy. Oh boy. Yeah. That's kind of the opposite of the kind of atmosphere that I feel like Jed Fish has put together at Arizona. Now the wins and losses aren't there yet, so you can talk about atmosphere all you want, but doesn't look good. I guess ASU's got 5 quarterbacks still on their roster.
They got this Alabama transfer.
Yeah.
So Dyson or something.
There's probably a Power 5 quarterback in there. So I don't know. I mean, Jaden Daniels is a heck of a talent, but that guy just sort of phoned it in, I think, at some point. And I think that you saw that reflected by how the players reacted to him leaving. So, you talked about Arizona winning the Territorial Cup game.
I was just going to ask you.
You feel a little bit better about it now than you?
No, I feel just like I did beforehand.
No, but I mean, do you feel even better about it? I guess.
I feel the same way I did because I felt really good about it. Felt really good about it when I asked you the question the other week, and I still feel really good about it. I don't care who's playing quarterback for ASU. Arizona's winning that damn football game.
Yeah. Well, I'll just mention again real quick with Arizona, and we'll do a lot more with Arizona football soon.
Yeah.
But you think I just was thinking again the other day, Eric, how Arizona came very close to winning more than one game. They obviously NAU they should have beaten, Washington they should have beaten. They were close. They played UCLA, Utah, Oregon close. They're not that far off from being a 4 or 5 win team. So you look at the talent, the upgrades on both sides of the ball, getting a bona fide Power 5 quarterback in Jaden DeLora. There's no reason they can't be at least a 4 or 5 win team next season. I mean, maybe that's the ceiling. Maybe 4 or 5 wins is the ceiling, but they're going to be better. They're going to be much more entertaining. I don't think they're going to have nearly as many red zone problems as they have. And the Territorial Cup game, you never know. Maybe a bowl game will be on the line for Arizona.
Bye, the 2022 Arizona football team. Just saying, tickets or just their future. Just have a good feeling about them. All right. Shane, the final thing we'll talk about on this week's show, predictions. So we're recording this once again Sunday night. Arizona plays Utah Thursday. They play Colorado over the weekend, and then they have at USC on March 1st, which is a Tuesday. We probably will not record our next podcast until after that USC game.
Yeah.
So we agree the women probably going to go 2-0 against the Southern California schools. Will Arizona sweep their next 3 road games? Yes or no?
Well, I'm a little more concerned about the women now without Kate Reese, but I think the fans are going to be fired up. There's going to be a lot of emotion. They're going to have senior day, that last game of the season. So I'll predict that they'll find a way to win both games.
Okay.
They have enough depth to overcome. And Kate Reese, as great as she's been, she's the best player on the team. When she's not played her best and only scored a few points, other players have picked her up. So I think they'll find a way to win both of those games.
Okay.
As far as the men, I think the men are going to go 2-1. And I'm just not sure which game it's going to be. They're going to lose. I could put it this way. I think if they'll beat Utah, they'll probably get down 10 points early, like they always do, but they'll beat Utah. Colorado, I'm concerned about. Buffs have won 5 in a row. They're hitting their stride. If they lose that game, I think that they'll bounce back and win at USC. If they beat Colorado, I think they might have a letdown and lose a close game at USC. I think USC maybe matches up better with Arizona than any other team in the Pac-12. So I think the men are going to go 2-1, which I think I'd be fine with, because they go 2-1. They're still in line for a 1 seed. They win their last 2 games at home against Cal and Stanford, which they should. That might lock it in right there. And maybe even one more, a Pac-12 tournament win. So I think 2-1. I'm just not sure on who the 1 loss is going to be. I'm leaning USC, but I think it could be Colorado as well.
Well, remember last time I told you when USC played Arizona, I said that game's going to be uncomfortably close. Just like I said against Oregon, and I nailed that one. I think Arizona will beat Utah with ease. I think they'll beat Colorado in a close game, but they'll take care of business. Not really worried about that one. I don't have a great feeling about USC on Tuesday. I don't have a gut feel on it right now. The Trojans, the night we're recording this, had to get a buzzer beater essentially against Washington State, and didn't play well for the last 30 minutes of that game. So Who knows what to make of that? I want to say Arizona's going to win, but I just don't have a feeling on that one. So I'm going to cop out yet again in the show, and I'm not going to make a pick on that game. I feel they'll go 2-0 into that game, and if they're, I wouldn't be shocked. Remember, this team beat USC last year in the Galen Center, and they weren't nearly as good as they are now. And USC was better. So just throwing it out there. You know what? Screw it. Arizona's going 3-0.
I was gonna say, Eric, what? You asked me these questions and you make me answer them first, and you're like, well, I don't know.
Okay. 3-0. Arizona's going 3-0. Gonna be close. We're gonna have some heart stoppers. Listen, March 1st is when they play USC. Get ready for March because it's gonna be a fun one. We want to thank our friends at Ice Shaker for sponsoring Buy or Sell. I want to thank our friends at Backcourt Marketing for sponsoring not only the guest segment, but the program itself. Check them out, backcourtmarketing.com, and on Twitter at backcourtmktg. Maybe we'll even do a live stream. Oh, no, wait, the game's at 9:00 at next Tuesday. So yeah,
we'll do another live stream before the season's over.
Yeah, we're gonna do another live stream. Yeah, for sure. So we'll do that. Backcourt Marketing, check them out on Twitter. Once again, if you know anyone that needs some social media help, especially if they're a small business, Backcourt Marketing can help them out. Check them out, backcourtmarketing.com. And also want to thank our friend Bruce Pascoe for joining us. Always a great interview. So Shane, it's been a lot of fun. Should be a very entertaining week plus ahead. For Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. As always, bear down.